Welcome back to another episode of Sideways, a podcast about motorcycles in Taiwan. I am Michael Branica, a filmmaker, YouTube filmmaker, and off-road enthusiast. And with me here I have Sasha Finster, an instructor at Moto Skills Factory, which is an on- and off-road riding school in Taichung. How are you doing, Sasha?
Good. Thanks for having me today, Michael.
So today we would like to talk about adventure bikes and kind of go over the stuff that is available in Taiwan. So let's go on and talk about the Midsize bikes. And we'll just start out with your I guess your personal favorite because you own one, the 790 Adventure. This bike in Taiwan, the S model lists at 718,000. Then the R model is 768,000. It's 190 kg. The R model is 880 millimeters seat height. And I did get to sit on yours and ride it around, and I did notice how tall it was. That was kind of the first thing I was like, whoa, this feels like a dirt bike. But it also feels really light, and the weight is really compact, and so it doesn't feel at all intimidating, at least to me from a dirt riding standpoint. I was like hugely impressed with it. So I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts, but maybe we could condense them.
Right, yeah. Well, I'm sure before we go into the 790 ADV-R, I'm sure there are lots of people out there would say like, yeah, but how about the Yamaha Tenere? Unfortunately, we don't have that bike here. I rode it once in Germany while I was back home, the Tenere is a really nice bike. It reminds me a lot of my Africa Twin. It will do anything that you need, but some things that you want to do, you need more like certain skill sets or some aftermarket parts to do it easier or better. But then again, we're not going to talk too much about that because we don't have that bike in Taiwan, right? The last thing I heard was the pricing being so close to the 790 ADV-R that I wouldn't be even tempted to buy that bike. In North America, in Europe, one reason why it's selling so well is because it's on the other side of the spectrum compared to the 790 ADV-R, because it just has ABS. That's it, because it's required by European law, and it doesn't even have off-road ABS. It's just on and off. That's it. The display looks like an old Nokia, whereas the 790 ADV-R has basically everything. And the price was almost the same. That's why we don't have that bike in Taiwan, because it just wouldn't sell. Even the most hardcore adventure riders, they wouldn't buy that because it's just, yeah. Talking about the 790 ADV-R, yeah, lots to talk about. Very simple is, for Taiwan, I think that bike is a great addition. Because, again, Taiwan is not that huge. The 790 ADV-R is not as comfortable as the 1290 or an Africa Twin or a V-Strom, whatever. But it's just phenomenal off-road. And, yes, it does have some quirks, especially the 2019 models. We had some riders in our school. They had blown out rear spring O-rings, whatever. They had problems with the gas tank. My display sometimes has water inside. Nothing too serious, but still, and it just feels like back in the day Ducati. It runs awesome. It's great, but you have to get prepare yourself for that. It just, to me, I ride it more like a big EXC. That's simple. When I jump back on the 1290 ADV-R, that feels like a proper big ADV bike. The 790 ADV-R or the 790 ADV, it's more like a bigger EXC. Yeah, because of the tank, the weight is so low. Even if you put in completely fill it up with 20 liters of gas, it just handles still beautifully. So to me, this is a bike that is really good for Taiwan. because you still have a certain amount of comfort while traveling on road. Obviously, if you ride a little bit faster, it feels better. When I ride on road, I basically treat it like a supermoto, and I'm fine. If I want to cruise, it's able to cruise, but you can feel it doesn't really want to do that, but it can. And same thing off road. The bar is a little bit lower. You're a little more in that attack position. So if you want to cruise along, and you don't want to go into all these technical stuff, whatever, you definitely have to put on some bar risers so you're not, slouched over the whole time. And then it's fine. But I've found out that the 790, you can throw a lot of technical stuff at it. So having the bars a bit lower is actually something good. So it's built for that purpose. And for people who are taller or just who like the low weight and just want to have a little more comfort, you just have to adjust a little bit for yourself, and then it's fine. I personally really like the rally mode. In Taiwan, we don't really use so much that rally throttle mode because it's just so direct. But being able, while charging up a hill or a technical section where you kind of maybe grip is just varying so much, or you just completely misjudge the situation, where you can, while you're riding up that hill, adjust the traction control. It's just great. You don't have to keep your throttle in a certain position, or you have to close your throttle. This is something really, really good. Something I really, really like. Yeah, the 790 to me is a really great bike. If you don't have too many issues with it. The only thing is just the price tag. Back in the States or in Europe, you basically can buy two for the price here. Right? But if you can afford it, it's great. It is really great. And one thing that I like the most out of all of the bike is just the suspension. The suspension is, I really love it. I had early suspension on my Africa Twin, and yeah, I had to spend a lot of money to get the early suspension, and it comes stock with the WP suspension, and it just feels basically the same. A little bit more on the harsh side. They've changed it now for the 890. You can basically treat it like a dirt bike and jump and really high and land on a flat, where any other bigger adventure bike would just bottom out. The 790 just keeps on going, right? But then we have most of the trails here are technical, and for that it's just too stiff. But we just readjusted the suspension setting, and I'm fine. I'm really liking it, and it's completely adjustable. High speed, low speed, everything. And we found a new setup, and so far I'm loving it. So yeah, some of the electronical gimmicks that are really, really good, but yeah, the chassis, the weight distribution, the suspension, this is really where the 790 stands out, right?
Yeah, and I was just so impressed with how compact it felt. It really felt like a big dirt bike, and kind of a supermoto kind of cross, just the way it handles the weight. And like you say, it's so aggressive. When you twist the throttle, like it wants to pick the front up, and it wants to just go. It's just so aggressive. I was reading about the engine, and it has plain bearings in it like a car. And so the engine is designed for longevity. It's designed to last a long time. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of mileage people get out of these. You probably won't get BMW mileage out of it, but it should last a while. I was pretty surprised when they announced they have like 15,000 kilometers, maintenance intervals. So 15,000 in between is a long time, So so far, I mean, I'm in the habit not to rev the crap out of engines myself, anyways. I'm also used to big single cylinders, and all the power is on low to mid RPMs anyways, right?
The 790, it likes to be revved, but to me personally, I always stay between 4 and 6,000. And I've got like 5,000 kilometers on it now, and I haven't exceeded, 12,000 RPMs. I think it was once on a beach where we, had just some big fun with drifting everything, where we had a little, 10-ish something. But yeah, the engine itself, it feels to me sometimes when we talk about this almost like a two-stroke engine. It goes up really fast, it comes down really fast. And compared to my Africa Twin or to a GS 1250, whatever, after you close the throttle, you still have that momentum that kind of for a second or two just keeps you going, pushing to the front. You don't have that with the 790. As soon as you close the throttle, there's nothing, right? So that's what KTM advertises now with the 890, where you have just a little bit more of that mass, that momentum that would just, and would make sense. But to me, it doesn't make the 790 obsolete. It just more on a sportier side, where it's just more direct and everything, and you might have to focus a little more on your throttle control, but nothing really that is bad. But yeah, let's see how long that engine lasts. I've seen people just revving the crap out of it. I don't know. It's yeah, but when you ride off-road, I don't know. Here in Taiwan, we don't have really that open space unless we really go sand riding, on the beaches, on the coast side. Then maybe, but again, we're not at the Dakar, where we, ride 180 kilometers an hour. The beaches are not that long. So, yeah, it's I'm curious myself, how long it will take for the engine to break down. Hopefully, I'm not going to experience that.
Yeah. So I noticed that some of your students also got those bikes as well. Did they all get the R model, or did they get some of them get the S model?
Well, no. So far, everyone got the R model. Yeah, it's just yeah. At our school, kind of, we like to try to go all the way. So even though the standard model, it's much more appealing, especially for Asians, including myself, because it's so much lower. But it's just weird because you can ride the standard model off-road, and there are plenty of people who are doing it. But it's just, if you've ridden the R model off-road, and then the standard model off-road, or the S model, which what they call it in North America, you just don't want it anymore, right? And you will try to find a way to overcome that high seat height problem, right? So what we've seen is, some of our riders, they're like 163, 165 centimeters tall, and or short maybe in that sense. And yeah, they just run the preload in a lower setting, and get the low seat version, or low seat from the Power Parts catalog. And but we did have already some riders who just got the low seat, and then afterwards opted to the standard seat, because eventually they realized, it doesn't make that big of a difference, or they got used to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure having the extra foam is nice as well. So the next bike that we're talking about is the BMW family, and I don't want to spend too much time on that, but you have the F series, that you have the 650 single, and then later they went to twins. They have the 700 and the 800 cc. Or I think the CC is the same. They call them a 700 and an 800. That one of them's just detuned, I think. You can get them in a whole range of like 19-inch cast wheels all the way up to, like, they had that Dakar version, which is a 21-inch spoked wheel. Some of them are on the used market are really cheap. I've seen them for $150,000. And then, obviously the newer ones are a little bit more. and then they recently redesigned it. They used to have the tank underneath the seat. They moved the tank to the conventional place in front of you. And I know that you've ridden those. Do you have a couple of thoughts on those bikes?
The GS 850, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I had to ride those back last time when I was in Germany for during the trainings and for my certification, everything, and it's in my humble opinion, there are worse bikes, I guess, but for let's say a next gen bike, it just doesn't feel like one. It's just the Tiger 800 feels better than the new 850. The weight distribution is just, the front is just so heavy. A lot of times you have to, even on we were riding through a forest, and it had rained a couple of days before, so you had like some mud sections there, and just on a flat surface, going around a turn, I actually had to move my weight a little bit to the back because the front in a turn was just, skidding out, right? Because the front was just so heavy. Maybe some people have some other experiences, but to me, it just feels that the front is just so much heavier than any other bike I've ridden. And we've talked a lot with other riders, with other instructors, and they all said they've been playing with the suspension and tried a lot of things, and they just couldn't get it to a balanced point where they were really satisfied with. So to me, I mean, it's a nice engine. It is smooth, but for Germans, a lot of people, they don't recognize it as a German bike anymore because it's not even designed by BMW. Right, the whole engine comes from a Chinese manufacturer. They design it, they produce it, and it just doesn't have that touch anymore. So, yeah, there are worse bikes. Well, worse bikes in a sense as an older bikes, because nowadays there are actually not really bad bikes anymore. But yeah, to be honest, I was kind of disappointed. I've heard that during the last GS Trophy, they had an upgraded version of it, but upgraded so far, what I've heard from people who attended it was basically more horsepower. But to be honest, when I rode it, again, it felt like an Africa Twin, so it did everything you needed it to do. So horsepower is not, to me at least, not really an issue, right? Just balance, the geometry, that was an issue, or is an issue to me. And apparently this is a bigger problem. That's something you kind of just, change because you have to change the frame and everything. So, yeah, this is a bike that, I don't know, I would not look at twice. It's especially for that price tag, right? So.
Yeah. Well, my dad had the old 650 with the single, and on paper, it should be a decent bike off-road. It's a single cylinder, and it's got a 21-inch front tire, and you would think it would be pretty good. But he recently, he sold that one a few years ago, and now he rides an R1200 GS, and he says the R1200 is much better off-road, and he only does easy stuff, but it's very strange that the 1200 would be better off-road than the 650. It's just a very strange situation.
Well, this is the thing, it's like the Boxer engine is just really, really good. And BMW is kind of shooting itself in the foot with that, yes, and I would be the same, it's like, yeah, I don't really want that weight and that extra weight and everything, but you don't really feel it on the big Boxer engine, and it rides more smoothly. It just, handles pretty good. The weight distribution is way better than, but then the 650, it's smaller, single cylinder, right? So that was a little bit different, but compared to the 750 and the 850 now, there's no reason, with the 1250 now being out, or the 1200, to get an 850. The only reason to me is that the 850 or the old 800, that both of these models have a 21-inch front tire, and the big GS does not, right? For obvious reasons, right? And but then again, I'm sure we're going to get into that topic when we get there, get to that model, right? But yeah, I think that, but this is still one thing that I like about the 800 and 850 is that it has a 21-inch front wheel, but it has a 17-inch rear wheel, same as the Tiger models, right? And to me personally, it doesn't make any sense, especially if you have two distinguished models, one for road use and one for off-road use. If you only have one model, maybe yes, maybe I'm missing something, but at least for me, if you have only one model for both segments, all right, okay, go like half, I guess. But if you have one for more road use, one for more off-road use, why a 17-inch rear wheel? To me, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree. And it's 1 inch on the rim. Like, you just change the rim, you relace, put new spokes on it. Like, it really, from the factory, is really not a big difference. But when it comes to tire selection, the 18-inch just has such a better off-road tire selection. But maybe that wasn't true years ago. And so, I mean, you'd already brought up the Tiger, and that's the next one on my list is the Tiger 800 and the 900. And I know you've had a bit of experience with that. You've done some classes with that. So to run down the specs, it has 94 horsepower. It has 221 kilograms. We talked about the 2117. It's a triple, so you've got to rev it quite a lot. I've noticed these guys who ride them, they are just screaming a lot. But the seat's kind of low for the category, and it seems like it's kind of manageable, even though it's on the upper end in weight. It seems like it's kind of manageable as long as you're doing some easy stuff off-road.
Well, actually, I rode it for a while. I also rode it on one of our ADV island trips where we went around the island. And first thing, weight-wise, it doesn't, to be honest, it doesn't really feel heavy to me. Like, it actually felt really, really light. When I rode it, it feels, it gets, obviously it doesn't handle as well as the 790, but it was by no means heavy. It was really, really nimble, really, really light, very easy to throw around the turns and everything. So I really, really liked it. Also, this is something that I feel that also a lot of people can get for their first, adventure bike, because it is really light. They imported the Asia version, with less stroke, basically like the CF, the low version, and so I think this one is actually really, really good. It's very nimble, like I said. It is not intimidating whatsoever. What I really like about that also is for beginners is that great engine. I used to ride the Speed Triple back in Germany, and I really love that engine. You have really a little more of a low end grunt, from more like a twin cylinder, a 2-cylinder engine, but you can rev it like a 4-cylinder engine a little bit like that, right? So it's really, really good. I really like the Triumph triples much more than, for example, the Augustas, MV Augustas, right? But so again, this bike is really, really good in my opinion for rookies because it is not intimidating at all. We had a lot of times during trainings, we had people forgetting switching their bikes into off-road mode or enduro mode because the engine was just so smooth, and so they hardly had any wheel spin, even on road bias tires, on stock tires, right? And so they forgot. The only problem was in road mode, you still have ABS on, and that will be a problem, right? But the engine is so great, it is so smooth, and when I rode that in, let's say, easier on easier trails with some ruts and some routes and everything, it is much more comfortable to ride because the range on that triple is so long. The first gear is so much longer than the first gear on any other two-cylinder bike. So for beginners who are not really used to that and want to keep the speed low, they don't really need to switch into second gear immediately because the throttle response is not so direct on all two cylinders. But on that bike, you can stay in first gear without revving the crap out of it, and it is so nice to ride. And if you want to, yes, you can really race that bike. And then again, in my opinion, it is good for almost like 70% of the riders. For basically 70% what you want to do, it is great. Only when it gets really, really technical and you need that momentum from lower RPMs because you don't have enough space and there is that small ascent, steep ascent that you have in front of you and you want to get over it and stuff. That's when you really have to rev it to get into that area where you have more torque. But then you risk more wheel spin. And that's where the Tiger 800 will show its weaknesses. But again, for 70%, maybe even 80%, what you want to do, that bike is great. Now, again, it is on the road. I rode it like the Street Triple. Right? It is really nice. It wants to run. In a sense, I do have to say, in a sense, the engine is on a road or whatever. In general, for people who like it more mellow, it is better, a little better than even the 790 engine, right? But if you want to go a little more technical, if you on road as well, if you want to, punch a little bit more, and then obviously the 790 is better. But the triple engine on the 800, I'm sure the 900 is even better. It will satisfy a lot of people, right? And for especially people who don't want to go all the way hardcore, which a lot of people who buy the 790 ADVR, for example, probably want to do, the Tiger 800 or the Tiger 900 will be a great bike. And especially if you want to get the Pro model, you have partially electronical suspension, partially as in only in the rear you have electronical suspension. The front is still conventional. So you have this huge display, like it looks like an iPad basically, where you want to watch movies on, which is just to me almost distracting, But yeah, the triple engine is absolutely great. The suspension is also good for about 70% of roads and trails you do want to take. Only when you really go really fast or really technical stuff, then you kind of it's not as transparent anymore, right? And you reach the limit. And to me personally, again, something that I didn't like, but again, it's beyond the 70% is a 17-inch rear wheel. You can really feel if you go into really technical stuff, there is a difference in traction between a 17-inch wheel and an 18-inch wheel. So but before that, I'm 100% certain most people will love that bike, will be happy with that bike. I personally would always recommend to go with the off-road version. Now with the 900, it's easier. They don't have too many different versions anymore. So basically stick with the Rally or the Rally Pro, and I'm sure you're going to be fine.